going to Andy's office and just that moment connecting with Zatima and Andy.
Can you please get her some water?
Yes.
What's wrong?
I need a lawyer.
On this very difficult subject. Unfortunately, in our society, we would blame Danni for what happened to her. I was cognizant of that while I was filming it. My goal as a storyteller is to bring as much humanity to Black women as possible. That trope about being strong, it almost gives people license to dehumanize us. We've been taught to hate women so much. So filming that scene for me, I just had all of that behind me and inside of me. I mean, it's a heavy subject, but it actually is fun when you care about it and you do the work for it.
All right, Sistas fans, you just saw Mignon's favorite scene of the series, which was mainly if I'm not mistaken, based on the clip, her dialogue, it was when she went to the law firm and, sat with Zatima and Andy going over the events of the night before surrounding the domestic violence situation between her and Jonah. And, she talked about, and I recall her tweeting, about this when the episode aired and talked about, how, society demonizes women, specifically like Black women, and, it's wrong to blame her for what had happened the night before in the show's continuity, or, that morning when her and Jonah got into it and then she crashed her car into his and, this, that, and the third. Yeah, I remember I think that was probably one of the biggest hits I took from Twitter from season 5. I still say the Danni backlash I got for what I said about the situation still wasn't as great as the Zatima fanatics who were mad at me for not rocking with Zatima's character in season 5. All right, so really, if you go back to the video, I did a pretty lengthy one. I think the title itself was "I Don't Feel Bad for Danni." When you look at every element of the situation leading up to Jonah, if I remember correctly, backhanding her, then spitting on her, then when she was going for the knife in the kitchen, that's when he grabbed her, choked her, or put his hands around his neck to show that, look, hey, I could choke the life out of you if I wanted to, but I'm gone. So, or, you're lucky. So he gets up and leave. That's when she proceeds to take the baseball bat. Because I think at first, she was yelling at him and, shoving him behind. Then he kind of knocked her to the ground. She took the baseball bat, started wailing on him. He managed to get to his car. That's when she bust the window out. And while he's still reeling from the baseball beating, that's when she got into her car and, just drove it into his, leading into, I think I killed this guy. I noticed, maybe, in hindsight, I think people misinterpreted my tweet because I didn't go into full detail, but that's because people don't tend to do their due diligence, because maybe I assumed that the people who read my tweet didn't, or they did read my, they did look at my video on it. But I remember in the Facebook group, there are a lot of people who agreed with me. And then, that's when I'm like, yeah, it makes sense, because the people on Twitter, the people on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, completely different groups of people. Some people look for anything to go off at, because people are like, I know you didn't say that about a woman. But here's the thing, though. I wasn't in the mindset of like, Danni deserved it. I never said that. I said, looking at each element leading up to the slap, and I'm talking about the slap. I'm not talking about the spit in the face and whatnot, because I said at that moment, Jonah became the most hated character in the series, bar none. I'm talking about the particular episode when she got slapped, not the stuff that came after, because that's when the heat started on, for me, by fans. Danni picked up this random guy, or picked him out, if you will. Later on in the season, thankfully, the girls had that intervention to try to help her out in terms of, we're not judging you, we love you, live your hot girl summer, just make better choices. Simple as that. It's the fact that she just picked this rando at the airport. They went to the bar. Jonah pretty much made it clear what he wanted, and she took him back to the apartment. They started going at it, but in all honesty, there were many red flags that Danni just ignored. You can't deny that. I think the issue with the way it was written, was that, anything that happened after, oh, you know what? Black women are the victim. I'm not saying there aren't black women who are not victims of domestic violence out there. What I'm saying is, if you look at it from the scope of anyone who blames any of this on Danni is an enemy of black women, is someone who denies there is domestic violence towards black women. I think the danger in that mindset is that you are erasing any responsibility of Danni in the Jonah situation. I think the lessons are to recognize signs that the person that you're on a date with, which I will applaud them on having Danni and Jonah in a public setting. I mean, I don't know if, was it the steam plant where they met up for drinks and whatnot? But I'll just say the bar. The location they were at, I don't recall if it was crowded, but I do know there were people present. So, while you're on that first date, that first interaction and whatnot, you kind of gauge the other person. Be wary of who you bring to your home, because you really don't know that person as well as you think they do. I mean, really, as well as you think you do. Like, on the one hand, they might be nice during that first date, 2 or 3, but they might have a side that you don't know about. Like, they might be popping up when you least expect it. Kind of like Aaron's ex-wife in season 1, and we saw what happened to her. And, well, more recently, look at what Karen's been doing over at Zach and Fatima's house. Just saying. But when you get to a point where you're uncomfortable, and I really hated this for Danni, when Jonah, I think, if I remember, he whipped this thing out, and I know Q did that. I think Jonah did the same thing. He kept pressing up on her because he was making it clear, like, yeah, I want it, right? Like, I want to buy these drinks, but I want it. And she's like, hey, I'll decide if you get it or not. But like I said before, those red flags at the bar kind of show, like, I don't know, Danni, you might not want to bring this dude home. And the way he entered into her apartment, it was clear, like, he didn't follow her home in the sense of, she said no at the bar, but he decided to come anyway. It seems to be a consensual, okay, you can come back to my place and we'll see what happens from there. So then once they make it to the bedroom and she's not feeling it literally and figuratively, that's when she gets on the phone with Andy, and Andy's like, get him out of there. So that's when, she's like, okay, yeah, I'm not feeling it, and then asked him to leave. And then, of course, he got in his feelings, got an attitude. He was out of pocket for the way he called her out of his name. Fully agree with that. Now, leading to the slap. This is the problem that some people have with what I said. If I remember correctly, I said, I think something that Danni should not have done. And look, I get it. Somebody calls you out your name. You don't want to just sit there and take it, because like I said, Jonah was completely wrong for that. It's the fact that she didn't just get the last word in like Danni has to do. She went on an entire filibuster about dude's little wee-wee. She saw this guy turn from, oh, wow, okay, yeah, I'm out of here, to, that Ike Turner meme. Like, what did you just say, Annie? And then he backhanded her. It's one of those situations where I think she should have read, Jeremy, there you go. You're blaming the woman. The woman, you're not, she's a victim in this. You're putting it all on her. It's her fault. All I'm saying is, another red flag. She should have just read the room. Let the dude talk his shit. I get it. It was her house and whatnot. But if she would have let him talk his shit, he was getting ready. He would have gone, and that would have been that. Maybe you run into him at the airport, and that's it. And then there, if he tried to start something, at least you got, your job security on your side, where it's like, hey, this is an unruly customer. He's trying to do this to me. Escort him off the premises. But she decided to handle it the way Danni does, and then we saw what happened. Now, I don't know the mind of Tyler Perry. I try to decipher it, hence why this channel even exists. But I'm willing to put money on Danni would not have gotten slapped had she not said what she said. Some people will agree with me. Some people won't. And that's completely understandable. But like I said earlier in the video, I think the message, and this is my takeaway from it. My takeaway from it. Be careful who you bring to your home. Be careful during those first, interactions with the person. See if you can gauge red flags. Don't allow your loneliness to get you into situations where you're willing to give yourself up physically and emotionally to somebody just to fill in a void. Obviously she's still hurting over the Preston thing, but she the sisters said it best for me in the season 5 finale. Look, if you want to have this hot girl summer and whatnot, just be careful, make better choices. And that's the thing, like, even when you get to Mignon's favorite scene of being in the law firm with Andy, and Andy, after it would turned out like the guy wasn't dead, he has bruised ribs, he has a history of domestic violence, and this, that, and the third. Andy was trying to have a sit down with her, like, okay, let's have an adult conversation right now. You just barely dodged a bullet of going to jail for murder. Because the moment Jonah left your apartment and you went after him, that's when it became a situation where you were the aggressor, and it would not have looked good for you at all. So while Andy was telling the truth, Danni wasn't hearing any of it. And if I remember correctly, even DeVal tweeted out, like, that's the problem with the sister circle. You can't tell them nothing. I mean, as soon as one sister is trying to counsel another, the sister who's in counseling will, throw in their face. Now, how can you tell me something when you're with the guy who cheated on his wife for you, or the guy that bruised your ribs? And it's like, well, while you have a point that one person shouldn't be pointing the finger at another, you can't ignore the fact that you just fucked up majorly. And despite the fact that you almost went to jail, you're ignoring legal. Say what you want to about Andy, but she's a freaking lawyer, so she knows what she's talking about. Yes, her hands are clean. Her love life isn't spotless. It's full. It's just in shambles. But at the same time, Danni, sometimes you just need to not run your mouth and listen. Like I said before, like it or love it or hate me for it, I still think if she had not run her mouth to Jonah, she may not have been hit. That's all I'm saying. But the dangers of not recognizing fault in your own actions, I think, leads to sending the wrong message to viewers. But then again, what do I know? I'm a black man. While this is a story focused on black women being victims of domestic violence, which is very real, I just think the way this story was structured was not a good one, mainly due to the fact, like, for example, like I said before, Jonah not having any visible injuries. He shows up at the airport, one crutch, and that's it. That's it. Then from there, of course, it's not like the storyline completely disappeared, hence why we had the intervention at the end of season 5, but I just feel like if you go back to the episodes where the incident happened, I think it was poorly paced. Like, okay, so did Danni go to work after the situation? Why was the parking lot at the apartment complex completely empty? Okay, so the police weren't contacted. So did Jonah, manage to drive his car to the hospital and get himself, checked in? There are just so many. It felt like it was just randomly tossed together and thrown in season 5 for the sake of drama and views, but there really wasn't. While I understand this was an important message to add into the series, which I am not denying in the slightest, I think the way it was handled, especially the aftermath, was not done well at all. I think that's the easiest way to put it, because there were just so many question marks about what happened. Like, what about the landlord? What about the other people in the apartment? Did none of them hear what was going on outside? It's just a lot of things. I'm like, okay, this makes zero sense whatsoever. But that's all I got. Let me know if this was one of your favorite Danni scenes. In terms of acting, hell yeah, it was amazing. But in terms of the real life, okay, I think some people are getting the wrong message. I'm free to state my opinion, just like everybody else is free to state theirs. People will agree to disagree, but I do feel like it is a mistake to not add any blame to this to Danni. I mean, hell, even the sisters do it, hence why they're like, hey, you screwed up majorly by just sleeping around with Rando 1 and Rando 2. Hell, I mean, you just messed around with the guy who led, whose actions led to Sabrina and Maurice going to jail. I mean, to not be called out for making better choices. If you hate me, then by an extent, you kind of hate the sisters. But then again, it's like, well, the sisters didn't blame her for getting hit. That's very true, especially Fatima. But at the same time, hey, that's all I gotta say about the situation. Let me know what you think. Do you agree with me? Do you not? Do you think that I'm just scum who hates black women because I'm pointing some of the blame at Danni? Or do you think, Jeremy, you have a good point? And like I said before, Jonah is a trash person and shit for what he did. But I'm just saying, when you look at all of the dominoes that needed to fall into place to lead from, these two meeting up for the first time to, the final encounter at the airport, which honestly, I don't know, Jonah might show up again. We never know. Also, correct me if I'm wrong, but Preston found out about the situation from the old white lady who's the landlord of the apartment complex. Did Danni ever address it? Because I know Preston wanted to talk about it, but she just blew him off and went to see the girls, and it wasn't really brought up again. And then all of a sudden he wants to propose, and it's like, bro, what the hell? There's a lot. See what I mean about it? It's like, it's a meaningful storyline with a message, but at the same time, it really doesn't get the proper care and attention it needs in the writer's room or in Tyler's mind. But that's just me. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Like and subscribe, and I will talk to you in the next one.